Good afternoon. Today is December 20th, 2020. Hope everybody is having a good day. And I want to talk to you today what I consider a very important day in history. 120 years ago today, December 12th, 1900, the constitutional establishment of the Prince Hall Shriners. Now, the ancient Egyptian Arabic order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine adopted its particular day, its particular name, on this day 120 years ago. But the organization itself traces its history back to 1893 at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. There's a book here called History of the Shrine. Ancient Egyptian Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine Incorporated, Pillar of Black Society, 1893 to 1993. The author was a late friend, Joseph A. Walks Jr., who at the time was serving as Imperial Historian for the Supreme Council of the Mystic Shrine. I served as a member of the historical committee that put together the history of the Prince Hall Shriners. And our committee included, most of them have passed away since then. I believe Ed Darnell of Detroit is still living. Booker T. Alexander of Detroit, who was truly a Masonic sage, a man of tremendous wisdom and knowledge. He's gone on, as is Winston O. Williams of Philadelphia, and my good friend Brian Abrams of Chicago. All were great men and great Masons, friends of mine whom we all dearly miss, and they contributed a great deal to the Prince Hall fraternity and the various houses. And of the various houses of Masonry, I must admit the Shrine has always been my favorite. And the Prince Hall Shrine traces its history to 1893, June 1st, at the time of the World's Columbian Exposition, or World's Fair, held in Chicago. Back on June the 3rd, we celebrate that day as Jubilee Day for the victory of the U.S. Supreme Court on that day in 1929. Back on June 3rd, I did a video concerning the history of the shrine, but it was in 1893 that John George Jones, at the time a prominent Prince Hall Mason in Chicago, and 13 other Prince Hall Masons claimed to have received the degrees of the Mystic Shrine, or the degree, there's just one degree. They claimed to have been initiated by Rolfelt Pasha from the Grand Council of Arabia, who was in Chicago to visit the World's Fair. There's a lot of problems associated with that story that I don't have time to go into today, whether there was such a person as Rolfelt Pasha or not. We've never been able to determine. Anyway, John G. Jones was a lawyer in Chicago who's pretty wealthy and pretty prominent individual politically. And he got involved in Prince Hall Masonry, various houses, and stirred up a lot of trouble. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Every organization at some point has to deal with troublemakers and with people who are out for money and power and don't really care about anybody but themselves. And unfortunately, the Masonic fraternity is not exempt from problems of this nature. Well, Jones was eventually expelled from Prince Hall Masonry, and he started the John G. Jones affiliation. There's various Grand Lodges, around the country. I know in New York it's called the Hiram Grand Lodge. Here in Texas it's called the St. Joseph Grand Lodge. They're based in Austin. I have known over the years some very good men who belong to the St. Joseph Grand Lodge. And uh, nevertheless, there's some problems with parts of their history. And John Jones was the first potentate of Palestine Temple #1 in Chicago. But it was the conflict between the two branches, the Prince Hall and the John G. Jones faction, eventually came to a climax. Jones was expelled from Prince Hall Masonry. And it was in September 1899 that Noble Isaac L.W. Holland, the illustrious potentate of Pyramid Temple in Philadelphia, along with other interested members of the order, joined in the call for a convention of temples. The object was to decide upon the future course of the order, in view of the ouster of Jones from regular Freemasonry, that they might rescue and perpetuate the order in a legal and Masonic manner. And so this was the beginning of what became known as the Prince Hall Shriners. The call was responded by representatives of Pyramid Temple in Philadelphia, Magnus Temple in Alexandria, Virginia, and Sahara Temple in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And after solemn and deliberate consideration, the representatives decided to reorganize the Imperial Council, this being in their minds the most reasonable method by which they might save the order founded by John G. Jones. Therefore, on the 12th day of December 1900, that was 120 years ago, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the representatives of the three temples met in a historic meeting, organized the Imperial Council of the ancient Egyptian Arabic order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine of North and South America in its jurisdiction. By placing Egyptian in its title, its black and African identity were etched. Any misinformation between it and their Caucasian counterparts would henceforth be avoided, or at least the rationale for it perhaps seemed sound at the time. However, there were at the time several imperial councils in existence, so there was definitely some problems here. And the at that first meeting, the following officers were elected and installed: Isaac Holland of Philadelphia as Imperial Potentate, H.T. Hilliard of Philadelphia, Imperial Deputy Potentate, R.D. Ruffin of Alexandria, Imperial Chief Raban, C.A. Knox of Pittsburgh, Imperial Assistant Raban, Hiram Carter of Philadelphia, Imperial High Priest and Prophet, John W. Smothers of Westchester, Pennsylvania, Imperial Treasurer, Magnus Robinson of Alexandria, Imperial Recorder, E.A. Turpin of Camden, New Jersey, Imperial Assistant Recorder, J.H. Jones of Alexandria, Imperial Oriental Guide, W.H. Beckett of Westchester, Pennsylvania, Imperial Chief of Patrols, W.H. Jones of Pittsburgh, Imperial First Ceremonial Master, J.E. Loveland of Camden, New Jersey, Imperial Second Ceremonial Master, W.A. White, Imperial First Steward, John Stokes of Camden, New Jersey, Imperial Second Steward, and A.F. Carroll of Pittsburgh, Imperial Captain of the Guard. So that was the beginning. And I was re-obligated in Zakat Temple #164 in Dallas, November 14, 1983. Shortly after it, I received my certificate of membership from the Imperial Council. And on there, I noticed that date, of the order being constitutionally established in Philadelphia on December 12th of 1900, a date I've always remembered and considered important. And while the beginning in 1893 is important as well, and I've devoted much research and writing about the World's Fair and all aspects of it of 1893, the role the Shriners and other groups played there, and also the World's Parliament of Religions that was connected with the World's Columbian Exposition. And so I'm not taking anything away from that. But I think it's also important to remember what happened on December 12th, 1900. 20 years ago, I had for a long time looked forward to the day of December 12th, 2000. And sadly, if there was any observance by the Imperial Council of the centennial, I didn't hear about it. My friend Winston O. Williams, a member of Pyramid Temple in Philadelphia, was still living. I called him, and he had been to the temple meeting that month, and nothing was said about the centennial. To me, that's very sad that a date like this would be largely ignored by the people who are part of the organization that gave rise to it. And perhaps 5 years from now, in 2025, there'll be a more elaborate celebration of the 125th anniversary of the constitutional establishment. The temples were renumbered at that time, and the Pyramid Temple in Philadelphia became number one. I found it interesting that Chicago, where it all started, Arabic Temple number 44, they came down pretty far on the list. But it's my understanding that Palestine Temple number one in Philadelphia, in Chicago, which was John G. Jones affiliated, continued to exist. It may still exist today, I'm really not sure. But so, by the way, it was also on November 13th, 1901, that the order was officially incorporated according to the laws of the District of Columbia. And all these dates are important, but I really do feel like Prince Hall Shriners should know about and celebrate the date of December 12th as an important day in the history of our order. And so on this, the 120th anniversary of the constitutional establishment of Prince Hall Shriners, I give my greetings to nobles and daughters throughout the imperial domain. Have a wonderful day.